All right. I am now joined by Russ Sabriglia. Did I actually manage that okay?
That was perfect.
Oh, nice. Okay, excellent. I met Russ back in, I want to say January. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was January.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know because there was a playoff game going on.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So yeah, I was staying with Michael Brooks in Brooklyn, and so he had plans to to have dinner with you, so I went along for that. And you had known him from when Žižek was went on the show. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually decided that these two needed to meet one another and to those two heads needed to come together. So
yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's definitely a service. I'm glad that happened. So yeah, I've never I've never met the guy. I've read some of what he's written, on and off for years, and watched his appearances. I remember watching the Pervert's Guide to Ideology when that first came out. They showed it in like the student theater at the University of Miami, where I went to grad school. But how did you originally hook up with him?
So, I mean, I was first introduced to his work. It was his book, which when I first read it, I half of it was totally incomprehensible to me because I hadn't had much of a background in Lacanian psychoanalysis. And so it was a grad seminar, my first semester in my PhD program. And we were assigned like half of the Parallax View, which is like a 400-page book. And, but I mean, even though I couldn't make heads or tails of half of it, I was, kind of enthralled. And then when I actually saw somebody brought over a DVD of the Pervert's Guide to Cinema, the first one that he did. And then from there on, I was kind of hooked, but I met him at the first, there was a Zizek studies conference I was doing my PhD at University of Rochester, and this conference happened to be at SUNY Brockport, which is about, 40 minutes, if that, of a drive away from Rochester. And I couldn't believe that it was that close. And so that was 2012. And I kind of linked up with somebody who's close friends with him, Todd McGowan, and just like talking with Todd, who's known Slavoj for, years and years, probably since the mid to late 90s. He introduced him to me, and then from there on we kept in touch and kept working together. So. Okay.
Yeah. I should also say that he did, he very kindly wrote the introduction to this book.
Yeah.
Myth and Mayhem, Leftist Critique of Jordan Peterson, which is, I'm listed as one of the co-authors. I wrote a chapter of it, but it's mostly written by Conrad Hamilton and Matt McManus, and there's a chapter by Marion Trejo also. And I think Conrad was the one who hooked that up. But of course, that's the that moment. God, I mean, so much has happened since. So much has happened since that debate that he did with Jordan Peterson. That kind of feels like recounting something that happened during the Clinton administration. But that was 2019.
You mean that wasn't the same year as It's the Economy, Stupid? I mean,
yeah. No, it feels like that.
Yeah.
That since then, you know, I mean, God, you know, since that happened, you know, certainly so many things have changed in my life, and so many things have changed in, you know, the world at large, and with, you know, and with Peterson, who's undergone some pretty bizarre, personal journey since then. Like, I think he's finally back now, but he was at like a rehab in Serbia.
I mean, I haven't watched. I mean, I've seen clips that his, you know, that his daughter posted. Of, you know, I watched parts. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I've seen parts of the clips. And every time I would hear, I mean, I don't want to make light of it, but but really every time I would hear something about what was the latest with Peterson, it didn't sound like it was, I mean, it was all too real, but it sounded like, you know, fan fiction or something. It could,
right. Like, cause it's just such a bizarre thrown together string of things. Like, it totally doesn't sound like something that would really happen. But I mean, I guess, which I guess is also like a big part of my interest in this topic is, you know, that debate and that, you know, that volume, you know, that we did later. You know, since a big part of why I'm doing all the stuff I'm doing now is Peterson, you know, related, basically because I God, back in like 2018 at the sort of height of the Jordan Peterson moment, you know, basically I spent a lot of time, you know, arguing on social media with like, you know, friends and relatives who thought, you know, who had a more positive take on Peterson's work than I did. And then that kind of led to when Doug Lane, you know, the editor of Zero Books, organized this this conference about Peterson in Boise, Idaho, which was he did it. He said it was as a you know, like it was called a conference in lieu of a debate because Peterson had originally been scheduled to be on Doug's podcast Zero Squared, and then he or probably somebody in his team had realized that you know, it wasn't going to be a friendly interview.
Oh, I didn't realize he was actually scheduled for that.
No, he was scheduled. Like that was on the books.
Well, wasn't Doug trying to get? Wasn't Doug trying to broker a debate between the two of them for a while, or I think he suggested it.
I think he suggested it. Yeah, he did. Originally Peterson was going to be on Doug's podcast.
Yeah.
And then Peterson pulled out of that. And like a week or two after he pulled out of that, Peterson was on Joe Rogan, and he told Rogan that like Rogan asked him, hey, you know, why do you never like debate any of these like equality of outcome Marxists you're always talking about?
Yeah.
And he said, well, it's because none of them want to talk to me. And so Doug got so pissed off at that, he organized this conference in lieu of a debate. And so I submitted, you know, like I submitted like a, you know, abstract, you know, to the conference. And, you know, I'd known Doug for a long time before that. So I sent him a thing saying like, hey, I submitted something for your conference. He was like, oh, cool. Actually, I also had an idea. I was wondering if you wanted to write a book for us. And, you know, that was kind of how all that stuff came from. And that conference in Boise is also where I met Michael. So that's so all thanks to Jordan Peterson and his wacky theories. But you, when I met you in January, you told me a story about that event in Toronto.
Yeah.
That has always made me laugh. Would you be okay with recounting that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, so the debate was actually a really good friend of mine, Matt Flisfader, was the one who ended up setting that up. And it was, I mean, you know, I don't want to give too many. I'll tell the story because it's great, but it was difficult to work with Peterson's people because they basically had control over the whole event. And you saw that he had an entire entourage with him that travels with him. And Matt, who is, he's a professor at University of Winnipeg, and he flew in. It also happened to be it was the same weekend as Passover, I think. Okay. So he flew in, but he got there maybe about a half an hour before the event started. But Slavoj and I got there, like Peterson's people wanted us there like 2 hours beforehand. And they just had all these different people keep coming back. It was just literally it was at the Hummingbird Center, or used to be called the Hummingbird Center. I guess it's the Sony Center now in Toronto. And like I'd seen like Foo Fighters there like 15 years ago or something, like 20 years ago. And it was Slavoj and I backstage, and like there were these like craft service, but it was just the two of us. And every 10 minutes, somebody would come by from Peterson's team, like the pay-per-view person would come by and tell us how many buys they had. And then he had a tour manager with him and everything. And it was just, and at one point Slavoj said, this isn't even the joke, but at one point Slavoj was like, he had all this group, and Slavoj looked at me, he's like, you see what I have to work with. I've got this guy. But the story you're talking about was afterwards. And I went back and found that Michael actually told this story to Sam on Majority Report. I'll have to pull up the clip, but yeah, afterwards, because Peterson's from Toronto, or his family I think they live in Toronto, but where is he a professor?
He's at University of Toronto.
Is he at okay? So
yeah, yep.
So his whole family was there, and then afterwards, he was introducing everybody to Slavoj, because if you've seen, I mean, I know you have, but those watching, if you've seen the debate, like it was clear that after about a half an hour of the actual dialogue that they had, that Peterson was like leaning in. He was like completely smitten by Žižek. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to introduce him to his family afterwards. And he said, and this is my daughter, Mikhaila. And Slavoj didn't know anything about her aside from the all beef diet that they've been doing. And so he didn't mean this at all irreverently, but he said, "Oh, this is my daughter." And Slavoj immediately goes, "The beef girl." And she didn't know. She, like, the look on her face was so surreal though. Yeah.
It's so easy to imagine. I mean, basically, if you've ever heard the guy talk, you could imagine how he would say that.
He said it so excitedly too. He was like, yeah, it was great.
Yes.
And then Peterson wanted to have dinner and everything. I don't know if they still email, but Žižek wasn't interested, but yeah. But it was clear. I mean, I love the memes, like what happened, this is what happens when you debate Žižek, is you end up, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like my favorite was there was a meme that was going around for a while. I don't even know how it started. I think I saw like pretty late iterations of it that were like boys with a time machine, girls with a time machine, and there were like 1,000 versions of it. And some of them were kind of sexist, some of them were the opposite of that, but the best one was like, girls with the time machine, and then there's a girl talking to like her young grandmother saying, "I'm your granddaughter." So, oh wow, right? And then there's boys with the time machine, and it's the picture of Peterson as he is now talking to Peterson a couple of years ago, saying, "Do not under any circumstances debate the Slovenian."
Don't debate the Slovenian. Yeah. I've seen that one. That one's great.